Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
This episode is brought to you by Sevens Boutique, an online shop created by 2 sisters, Angie and Jess, who believe you should walk boldly, dress divinely, and know your significance. At Sevens, you'll find easygoing pieces that are cozy, classy, and made to mix and match. Think relaxed pants, cozy sweaters, and lifestyle sets you'll want to live in. Every item is handpicked with purpose, so you can shop confidently, dress comfortably, and walk boldly. Inventory is small and curated, so if you see something you love, don't wait. Visit sevensboutique.com and use the code PODCAST10 for 10% off your first order. www.sevensboutique.com. Walk boldly, dress divinely, know your significance.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where we hope you are enjoying the Labor Day holiday weekend here in the States. I know that we have listeners all over the world, and so maybe you don't have an extra day off. And for you, I apologize. We are lucky this weekend. I always say Angie finds these great guests, but I think in this scenario, they found you.
Mm-hmm.
And so today we are going to be joined by Michael Pereira. Did I say it right? I wanted to say Pereira initially, and that was just such an American way to say Pereira. And so I wanted to do this well. And Michael, we'll kind of let you just briefly introduce yourself, where you're from, and then we will dive into today's topic, which I think is going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for having me. And you said the last name perfect, so don't worry. So yeah, I'm the founder of the Autism Voyage. But first, and than anything else, I'm a father, I'm a husband. Everything started a couple years ago when my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He is on the mild side. There's several severity levels. In his case, it's mild. He also has ADHD. He's 7. He began, I would say, really talking like a year and a half ago. So long story short, we started looking for resources when we were at the point that we knew he had a lot of symptoms that needed to be addressed, but we were in denial. And not only in denial, but also there, you got to look at who you're listening to. Sometimes family would say, hey, don't worry, you were the same. And obviously, if you're in denial, plus there's somebody saying that there's nothing wrong, that could procrastinate any early intervention. Long story short, we went through that denial phase and / dark phase because ego hits, a lot of things happen throughout that phase. And we started looking within ourselves if there's any blogs, we couldn't find any that would basically tackle the type of topics we wanted to read about. All the blogs we saw were more research-based, like universities or academic research. And we also started looking for our own financial advisor or planner. I came from corporate. I traveled a lot. So, I was saying, okay, what if something happens to me when I'm traveling? Or, my employer benefits, they seem good until I need them. They fall short. What if something happens? So we started looking for our own financial planner or advisor, and everybody just wanted to sell us something or recruit us. So it became very difficult to have a conversation around what we call special needs planning. This is a team effort. You usually work a lot with lawyers, if anything, and just decided to part ways from corporate. We created our own blog. We just crossed 90 articles. We have our newsletter. We just crossed over 2,000 families. We open our own insurance planning practice for families like ours. And we just launched our own directory like a month ago, just providing resources for families. Hope it wasn't too much.
I appreciate that overview. I know when you and I chatted prior to recording this podcast, in your journey, I saw a lot of similarities in our journey too, of going back to why we created this podcast. We were looking for resources on how do you even blend families. And there's not a lot out there that is like real, authentic, this is what you're going to experience, this is how we dealt with it type of resources. So I love that you took what you were experiencing and turned that into something that would be extremely valuable for other parents.
Yeah.
Can you dive into maybe what that was like initially when your son was diagnosed and just how you and your family dealt with that? Because I think there's probably a lot of people that are in similar situations where it's like, you mentioned denial of, I don't know if something's wrong or not, but there's a fear of really finding out.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe share a little bit about that journey.
Well, when he got diagnosed, we knew way before he had something. When we got him diagnosed, it's because we said, is it now or never? Because this is getting worse. So we knew a long time ago that he had something because he was hitting his head against the wall, tippy-toeing, aligning stuff. He was obviously nonverbal, making a couple of noises, flapping. And it came to a point that, there's some behaviors that may leave with time, we don't know. But when behaviors start hurting the child, I think that's where, that denial needs to, you need to put it aside and address it, because that can really hurt. There's some behaviors that can really put in danger the child's, well-being. So we saw a long time ago that we needed to be addressed, but that denial, I would say, it was our ego, I would say. I say it now very, and I come here today and I seem very calm, and we came into terms with this reality, but it's taken us a long time to just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he's high functioning and all that, but it still was a curveball. And in that denial, I think it just, like you mentioned, the fear of knowing something that, it's there. It's hard for any parent. It's what I can say is the best thing you can do is have a conversation, but a conversation with a professional. Sometimes I will have those conversations with family, and in theory, I was doing the wrong thing. Why? Because it doesn't mean that because my family loves me and loves my child, understand what's needed, or they have experience or not. So by me trying to seek conversation with a family member, in theory, I was also, I see the same behavior in the financial realm. It seems like I was going in cruise control, but I was going the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm asking the wrong person.
Yeah.
Until I came to a point that you have to seek professional help. If it's from a parent standpoint, that you're in depression, you're in anxiety, you deal with a lot of uncertainty because you don't know if the child may become independent. So you deal a lot with getting comfortable with uncertainty, but at the same time, you have a lot of ups and downs. From the child's perspective, you want to make sure that you're working with a professional, because if there are a couple behaviors that can be mitigated, right, why not do it, right? So that denial phase just showed me that the earlier I come into terms with this reality and seek professional help, I think that acceptance phase is, it's a weight off of your shoulders, I would say. But you need to understand that you got to see the benefit.
Gosh, that's so true. If you just take the circumstances, remove the circumstances from all of it, the moving from fear to acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
You can apply that to so many different scenarios in life. But I do feel like if you can name it and like, okay, I recognize that I am super scared of uncertainty or what lies ahead. When you move into acceptance, which that's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even talking from my own experience, right? Of, okay, this is our life now. Now what do we do? That's when you can actually move forward. Because otherwise, fear, I feel like you're frozen in whatever you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. But once you can move to acceptance, that's And that's a long journey. I don't want our listeners to think like, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm just going to accept this and now we're going to move forward. It is a long process, painful process, but then you can actually, now what's the plan, for our son type of thing.
Yeah. But until, for example, in our case, until we got to that acceptance phase is when we realized that, our denial just spoke about how selfish we were, how much we thought our life changed, how, everything about us, what I thought, it came to a point that we said, what, we cannot be so selfish, because at the end of the day, the only one that's will not get benefit from our denial is Christian, right?
Yeah. So then once you started kind of reaching out, what was that experience like? Or what did you and your wife learn from that you then applied into creating this Autism Voyage to help other people? Like, were there some aha moments or some things you never thought you would even be thinking about in trying to navigate this journey?
I think, we realized that first being aligned as a marriage is very important, because that's the partner in crime. And that's where you start talking about a lot of things. And alignment, I think, is the first thing that helped us, because if we're on the same page, everything else will flow. So I think that the first thing was that just sitting down, coming into terms, not letting my ego or anything else come into the conversation. Secondly, I would say trying to get that curiosity skill set, just ask everybody questions, ask all their parents what their experience was like. Even ask the same doctors. For example, something that we did do is that if we would see a doctor and it wasn't convincing, we would go to another one, and compare. We just didn't want to go with just one advice, and then come back and talk as parents and all that. Another thing that we applied was educate those around us. My mom, her mother-in-law, because they didn't know, a lot of stuff that happened. Like, for example, Christian, at one point, he could not bear to hear the blower in the men's bathroom, the one you dry your
the hand dryer,
hand dryer, because sensory. He couldn't hear he would have a very big meltdown when he would hear the blender in the kitchen, or my wife would blow dry her hair. It was a lot of stuff that, we needed to also share those around us. And even though when this happened, I would say in our case, our circle became very small. There is that. I think that happens to a lot of people, and for us it did. So those who are close and remain, we would just sharing, try to get them involved as much as possible.
I think that's just so true. We've talked about that before. It's like when these things happen, a lot of times your circle has to go smaller so that you can navigate this situation. And so one of the things you talked about was the communication that has to happen for other people around you. And we talked about that with just our grief journey, right? There are times when we may make plans with someone and then the day comes and Angie just doesn't feel like doing it. And just knowing that it is okay to say, hey, today's just not a good day and we can't do this. I would assume that a lot of situations similar to that have happened to you guys, especially when you're dealing with a young boy. Yeah, you may have had plans, but today we can't do those plans. Or educating your family around you, your mother, your mother-in-law, as to how those things can occur. That makes everything easier for everyone and a better understanding of the situation, right?
100%. And plans change, like you mentioned. Like, for example, Christian just started school, a new school, I would say. And the day before, he had a huge episode just because he's not good in transitions. He gets used to something like a habit, like a routine, and it was a huge, and for him, it just stopped. It took us like an hour and a half to get him out of that episode meltdown. But for him, after that, it was okay. But for us, we were all week without almost sleeping, worried if he's going to be able to get along with his classmates, if the teachers aren't going to have the same patience as us. There's a lot of things that happen it comes to a point that's not what I feel if I feel tired. It comes to a point that I'm forced to, even though being tired, being 100%. Yeah. And it's very hard to be a functioning parent while being exhausted.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Yeah. So that's for us. But out of all this, we started talking to other parents. We did all their activities, and we decided, hey, from the beginning, there's something that we need to do, because there's a gap that we're seeing, that everybody is in this, I would say, community, which is very underserved, is very transactional. For me, in the financial space, everybody was like, just want to sell policy. They didn't understand the just sell it and never talk to you again. This is something very delicate, because when you have a child that you don't know when he might be independent or until when he will depend on you, it's not just a one call close like a lot of salespeople do. It's comprehensive, and you need to have a conversation. This is, like I mentioned in the beginning, a team effort. So when we talk to families, we want to know from a legal perspective, what do they have in place? Because if that child is disabled, might not be able to make a decision by himself later on, there has to be some sort of trust or something that can, dictate the instructions as of who's going to take care of him, if there's any guardianship, if there's any power of attorneys. It's not just a one call close that everybody says in social media, right? That one call close can jeopardize a lot of things in the family dynamic, and a lot of agents or financial professionals don't understand that. So I think that's where everything began, the blog, because we couldn't find anything, the newsletter, because we wanted to create like this community, and the insurance practice, because we saw this gap that there's not a lot of people that can take time and build different type of strategies, different type of scenarios with families.
So as you're getting into that process, what would you say were, obviously you're in a new place in life where you're trying to figure out, like, how do we go forward in parenting our son, also trying to get all of the day-to-day, as you said, insurance, things like that planned. Now you're trying to align with your spouse. It's a lot of balls that you're trying to juggle at one time. What would you say were a couple of things during this transition that really helped you to move forward?
There's something in I took a training one time, and it said, there was like this saying that it's not your fault, but it's your problem, right? Mm-hmm. So we as a marriage that said, Christian's not a problem, but it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility, and it comes to a point that we as parents of special needs need to stop thinking of ourselves as victims. And we need to be accountable and have ownership of that life that obviously it's a pure blessing, right? But it comes to a point that we as parents, we're forced to develop a lot of skills CEOs have. You gotta be persistent, you gotta be consistent, you gotta fight on behalf of others, you gotta look 5 steps ahead, you gotta, all these skills any CEO has. We as parents of special needs, I think any parent, but we're forced to, in special needs, to acquire these skills. And these skills cannot, you cannot have those skills and be a victim. It doesn't match. So these skills by itself are going to help you exceed in life and going to help you, build something for that child or for your family that you might not have thought before. So for us, it's that, it's just building that skill set that we never thought we would have.
Something you said earlier made me think of a question that I get asked a lot that I want to ask you. And you mentioned like your circle getting smaller. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think anybody going through a traumatic, or total switch in life, what people struggle with the most surrounding you is they don't know what to say or do. And so I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, my sister lost her child. Like, I don't know what to do or say. How do I support them? And my answer in that is always like, there's nothing you can do to fix it or change it. Mm-hmm. Because we tend to try to be fixers, like try to make it better. And there's nothing that's going to make that situation better. You just have to be there for them. You just have to show up. You just have to lean in, type of thing. Mm. But I think people they're uncomfortable with that, right? So what would your advice be to maybe external family members or friends that want to try to support someone that has a child with autism? What would you say this is what you should do to try to support them rather than backing away, because that's what most people do. I feel like they don't know what to do or what to say. So it's better to just like not say anything at all. But then you feel like your circle gets smaller and people are not engaged. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would say the first in my experience is not to assume, because a lot of people assume that because my child is autistic, he may be, I want to talk about it, for example. And in that case, I think that openness is everything, being transparent, being able to, but that depends also who's doing that. If it's somebody that's coming to you with, the other day, it happened to me. Like I didn't see a person for years, and we got to see him, and the first thing he starts to do is after years he starts talking to me like he's my mentor. I'm like, hey, you gotta stop. I know you like Tony Robbins and all that, but stop. You stop and just learn what's happened. Learn what's current. And if you want to then, but don't start talking to me like if I'm not doing those things, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's, and even more in social media when everybody just wants to give out supposed, knowledge, just be a supportive person. Don't, if you see that parent is starting to isolate, try to do something with them and involve them in something, even though if it's on Zoom. Try to help them go into the support group. If you see, for example, that if it were me and I see a friend that his child is diagnosed and he's going through his ups and downs, I would look for a support group and just share, hey, you know what, Michael, I saw the other day a support group next to you. Do you want me to go with you? That would be something good because I know he researched, there's intention. If I say no, well, that's fine. But at least I knew that he's doing his effort, even though he doesn't know anything, right? So I would suggest that.
Yeah. Listen and walk in the journey alongside, but don't try to give advice. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
I would just lean in on something you said early on today, is that you guys felt like something may be wrong, but you were in a fear point. You would ask people and they would be like, oh, you were like this. Let me ask you this question. What would have happened if somebody in your close circle would have said, oh, I think there's a problem you should do? How would that have felt? Or what would that, can you even go back and think that through? Like, do you wish someone would have actually been like, hey, maybe you should check this out? I don't know. I don't know that answer all the time, right? Because you see things and you're like, should I say something? Should I not? I don't know.
I think it's not what you say, it's the way you say it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody close by and you're concerned, you should say it, right? At the end of the day, you always got to put the best interest first. If the child, you can see that there's something there and you don't know, just admit, hey, I don't really understand this, but based on my limited experience, I can see that your child is doing this. Is that okay or not? And maybe the parent, no, it's completely normal. Okay, who mentioned it? It's normal for you. Maybe it's cultural. Maybe, there's a lot of things. The other day I was talking to an IEP coach. An IEP is a specific plan that's made for the child. And I was talking to her and she said that in the IEP, the school rejected a lot of stuff because she wasn't having eyesight with the professional. Like she wasn't seeing him to the eye. And they put her, no, she's not capable of this. When the IEP coach apparently started deep diving is because she's from a part in, where is it at, in Asia, that the only people they look at the eye is their parents.
Okay. Yeah. She wasn't making eye contact with them.
Because in the culture, the only people they make eye contact with their parents or their spouses. Any other people they look down. And they, there's a lot of things that happen. And even I didn't think about that. But what I would say is, if somebody would want to tell me something like this, for example, always go with an approach of you have limited, understanding. And that you just see this type of behavior, is this normal or not? And try for that parent to educate you and have a conversation. Maybe that opens up, the possibility of getting the child or loved one evaluated. Make sense?
Yeah,
it does.
sure.
And not something I would have even thought about was the cultural side of things that could have thrown things off.
Me neither.
So
Me neither. She was the one that told me. It was like, wow, that's why we need to be comprehensive. We need to deep dive and understand that every situation is different.
we did not tell our listeners when we started today where you guys live. I don't know if you
Miami.
want to. Yeah, in Miami, Florida. You notice that the accent is not Midwestern. Okay.
No.
But you're not originally from Miami.
No. My wife. So I was born in Atlanta, raised in Puerto Rico, and came to the States in 2008. My wife's from Cuba, and she came to the U.S. Like 20 years ago.
How did you guys meet?
Giving food to the homeless.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's like it was like an event, and there were homeless and low family income that would go and pick up food, and we met there. She came from her church, I came from mine. I knew her sister, but I never saw her. And in that event, that's where we met.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's a cool story.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
But yeah, Miami, it's good. It's like being in the Caribbean all year long.
Yeah. Yes.
We've been to Miami a couple of times in the last 5 years, and it's always a good time for sure. A lot of culture down there. As you're down there and you're working towards helping other people with all the things that you're doing, right? Because what you've done is kind of what I think we've tried to do, right? We had first a blended blessed situation where we blended families and we're trying to figure out like where are the resources, and then we lost Hallie, and it's like, well, we need to be able to help other people who have lost children. So here you guys are, you realize, hey, our son has autism, we need to help other people. In that process, can you tell our listeners if they know someone who has a child with autism or is struggling, whether that be from an insurance perspective or things like that, just how they can find you, and whether it's your blog, whether it's your newsletter, any of those things that they can look towards to try to find some resources for themselves?
Yeah, of course. So it's at www.autismvoice.com. There you're going to see the blog. Like I mentioned, we just crossed over 90 articles. We use different type of sources from Reddit, Facebook to AI to build the blogs. We have 2,000 families in the newsletter. You're going to see it there. And if you want to talk about insurance planning, where it's more about, working with a estate planner and so forth, you can just schedule a call with us and we can guide you there. And yeah, that's it. And the directory is also there. You're going to see coaches, IEP coaches. There's travel agents that specialize in special needs. There is coaches even for resume writers, those who are transitioning to an adult and now want to go into the workforce. He also provides that service to build a resume, so that everything's going to be there.
I went out there and checked it all out. There's a ton of solid information for parents. Like anything, it feels like any question you might have about something, it's out there. One of the things when Michael and I were prepping for the podcast, he had mentioned was around the level of not fear, but that siblings feel like they're going to have to take care of their brother or sister when they get older. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about it. Like that's a secondary thing that comes after, the initial acceptance of like, oh my gosh, there's all these other things that happen that you don't think about. But there's an article out there around that process and how to help support them and work through that. Is a lot of great information.
Thank you. And mentioning about siblings, that's something that we see a lot is the false expectation that sibling will become a guardian. That's something that it's known in this community, and that's something that if there's any family that has a child with any related conditions, autism, or any complex medical needs, and there's siblings in the house, obviously, I would highly suggest to start the conversation just understanding what that sibling believes her role will be in the future. Before even saying you got to be a guardian or you got to be, the caregiver. Understand, because that sibling has their own goals. They want to have their own children. They want to, so it has to be something that it just flows, because if not, that relationship with that sibling will be very, very damaged later on. And I've seen that. The same thing for blended families. Actually, the divorce rate in special needs is very high. like, I think it's like 80%. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of blended families, and that type of dynamic is also delicate because there's both families, but at the same time, there's a child that requires care. Yeah. And you want to make sure that both families, agree on the guardian, both families are. So it's good when everybody's on the same page, but it is a conversation that needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It is one of those things where people don't think about it, right? Whether it's blended families, parents who have lost a child, the autism spectrum, so many of those families do end in divorce. So I think that these extra resources are so helpful because, as you mentioned earlier, when you and your wife are in alignment, and just like any marriage, right? When you're in alignment on the goal where you're trying to take everything, yes, there's going to be challenging times, but you're able to keep moving the ship, let's call it, forward in the sea because you know where you're trying to take it. You see the lighthouse up ahead, you're trying to get there. And so anytime you have extra resources, and again, autismvoyage.com, VOYAGE.com is where you can go and see some of the work that Michael and his family have been doing to make this a reality.
Thank you. And something I do want to mention before anything, even though alignment is perfect, but I also want to give kudos to my wife. She's been great. And, just handling Christian, Amanda, which is our daughter. She has her own speech delays now, Amanda. We believe it's because Christian was not talking. So obviously that we believe it affected her. She's not diagnosed, but having Ellie, my wife, just in the battlefield with me, it's been amazing. So it's not about me or just the side. There's a lot of resources there, and I can take a lot of credit, but in reality, it's not like that. At the end of the day, she's been with me all the way, and I think it's also worth mentioning that it's a team effort.
I love it.
We oftentimes over the years have asked guests if they have like a special family tradition that they like to do with their families before we let them go. I don't know if that's something you guys have that you would want to take a second.
Yeah, no, right now, no. At the end of we were like 6 years without going out to a restaurant or anything else because of the tantrums, meltdowns. We felt sometimes embarrassed because of the meltdowns, and it took us a long time. So now is when we've been able to, just go out. Christian is way calmer after we put him in jiu-jitsu. It's helped him a lot. We reduced the screen time, but it's taking a long time. So now is when we believe it's when we're going to start enjoying a little bit more when we go out. We've gone to Disney, but obviously when we get back from Disney, I need also vacation. Vacation. Because it was hard, but we haven't had a possibility of enjoying a hobby or the possibility of enjoying a family tradition as of the moment because of obviously the conditions that we are right now. But we believe that, that's something that I want to try, and that is archery. That's something that, that we want to do. The kids, obviously jiu-jitsu, we do really want to get him deep into jiu-jitsu, start competing and all that. So maybe that could be a family tradition to start going to competitions and all that. But now we're looking for
family traditions.
Yeah, correct. We're looking forward to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's awesome.
I love it. Well, thank you for your vulnerability today and sharing your guys' story and Christian's story. And so we'll be thinking about you guys and praying for your continued journey, that God will bless it with many great things and the ability to help other people as well, because that's really what it's about, right?
Yes, community.
Community, for sure. 100%. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time today. Again, if you have any questions at all, if you're looking for community resources, you can go to autismvoyage.com and learn more. With that, we hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for listening. God bless. Thank you for listening to Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.